right, let's get to one of our top stories this morning. It's official. The United States has hit the federal debt ceiling, or in plain English, the country reached the amount of money it can borrow to finish paying its bills. What happened next could be detrimental.
Now, the debt limit, which was last raised in December of 2021, reached an astounding $31.4 trillion, a number so big that if every American had to help pay, it would cost them $94,000 each. In response to the U.S. hitting the limit, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen sent a letter to congressional leaders saying her department would have to take, quote, extraordinary measures to keep the government funded. If Congress does not act, then the country could default on its loans, something that has never happened before.
Here now to give us some more context around this story is Chris Campbell, Chief Policy Strategist at the Kroll Institute and former Assistant Secretary for Financial Institutions at the U.S. Department of Treasury. Chris, welcome back to Morning Rush. Good to see you again. So you've been involved with more than a dozen debt ceiling negotiations while you were at Treasury. What are they discussing right now?
Right now at the Treasury, they're going through a prioritization and trying to find ways of actually continuing to fund the government, looking at all the accounts and trying to find, again, they're in this place where they've now hit the statutory limit, which means that Treasury can no longer borrow money. Congress must give them the permission to do so. And so at this time now, they're going to, with prudent planning, just like everyone does at their home budgets, prudent planning and make sure that every dollar stretches as long as they can, making sure that the government can continue to pay its obligations for as long as it can until we actually reach that time when the government can no longer spend any more money because there's just more money to spend. And Congress must then act in order to give the administration, Treasury, more borrowing authority so they can go out and actually sell more bonds.
So, Chris, the Treasury Secretary does have some levers that she can pull. She's taking extraordinary measures. Is that as simple as moving money from different agencies around? And how much, wiggle room does that give?
So it is a bit of that. Yes, it's careful and prudent money management, effectively from the government perspective, and that's what the Treasury Secretary does, and all the levers that she has at her control. She will make sure that to stretch those dollars out as long as they can, and at the end of the day, it's. When they're out of money, just to pay for their bills, it becomes a real problem. The Congress and the administration have never reached that point where we've actually gone past that and not be able to meet the obligations of what the U.S. government has. And really, candidly, it's actually a matter of great speculation as to what would happen after that. But I can tell you one thing: it's a cascade of bad things. It's not. None of them are good. So
name one or two of them.
So look, I think I liken this, for the viewers. It's effectively like when you don't pay your credit card bills. Your people who you owe money to get pretty cranky, and they actually want to get paid back. And so that the challenges that you have, at the end of the day, it's you need those people. If you don't pay your bills at home, but you go back and want to have more credit or get more credit cards, they're likely going to say no. And so, but the government must. It's a really important part of how the government gets funded through debt. Just put that in perspective, for every $1 the U.S. government brings in, we spend about $1.25. And so that, we do a lot through debt. And so we are required to be able to go back and actually ask for people to continue buying U.S. debt. And when we don't pay our bills, that debt becomes a lot more expensive, and people perhaps may not buy it. That puts us in a real problem. It could put us in a real challenge, actually, not being able to pay for the things that our government spends money on every single day.
So earlier you mentioned that right now they're going through this process where they're prioritizing, okay, what do we pay back? Like you said, we do this every day with our own budgets at home, right? What credit card bill can we just pay the minimum on? What can we pay off? Different things like that, different conversations like that. Yesterday we learned that certain government pension funds would not receive funds. So can you walk us through the decision process that goes into what to pay and what not to pay when it does come to that prioritization that you mentioned?
Yeah, look, there's actually really no set formula. It's actually it's up to each individual secretary, and to do that. But while I was at Treasury, we had our contingency plans. Should we breach the debt limit, which we did not. But I think I'm certain that Secretary Yellen and her team are doing the same thing as they stretch out their spending and prioritize the accounts. Pension funds, are very large pots of money with lots of money in them to pay people. These were promises the government has made to pay the people who used to work for the U.S. government on their pensions. We can draw down those accounts when the hope and anticipation that once Congress gives the administration back or the Secretary of Treasury back the authority to buy more money, then you put money back into those accounts and make them whole again. Again, every account in the U.S. government that has a significant pool of money is subject to be used to try to find ways of making sure that the government can pay its debts.
And so you think those large pots of money, the government pension funds, that would make enough of a dent to make a difference?
Look, it buys time. It buys time. What also buys time is that we're coming up into as every American knows, we're coming into April, right around the corner, and when people are going to have to pay their taxes.
Right.
So there'll be a large influx of money the government gets in April, and there's also quarterly payments for those people who have small businesses or pay quarterly payments or businesses that pay quarterly payments to the government. There'll be a huge influx in capital when that happens as well. There's other factors that happen, like many people are talking about and speculating, and we at Kroll are speculating that we're going to go into recession, right? So if the economy slows down, that means the government will make less money, and when inflation happens and things become more expensive, the government, all of these things are contributing factors to how fast and how long the government can stretch out those extraordinary measures to be able to make sure the government continues to be funded.
So, Chris, just real quick here, based on your fears of the recession, everything we just talked about a debt crisis happening, what are some things people that are watching at home can do right now to protect themselves from a worst-case financial scenario?
Look, candidly, I don't want to scare anyone, and really we shouldn't, because I really don't think we're ever going to get to the kind of the worst-case scenario. But if we do breach the debt limit, we would probably go into not a recession, but probably a depression, and with significant challenges where the U.S. dollar, the dominance of the U.S. dollar around the world perhaps could be called in question. If that happens, we're all in a lot of trouble. And so I'm certain that prudent minds in Washington will weigh out on this. This is unlike when many Americans hear when the government doesn't get funded or when appropriation bills don't get passed and the national parks shut down. This is very different. This is a very different scenario where this is the full faith and credit of the U.S. dollar and what the government can and the faith that the government can has or people have in our government to be able to have faith in our dollar. This is something that you just can't really play around with, and so it just would have consequences that would be almost generational if we breach this.
Huge, clearly. Chris Campbell, Chief Policy Strategist at the Kroll Institute. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks.